Today on the Elmore Leonard podcast, we are thrilled to have Matthew Weiner. Matthew's the creator and showrunner of Mad Men, which premiered in 2007 and ran for 7 seasons. Mad Men won the Emmy Award for Outstanding Drama Series 4 years in a row, along with a slew of Emmys for Outstanding Writing, and is widely considered one of the greatest television shows of all time. Before Mad Men, Matthew was a writer for 2 seasons on another television show also considered one of the greatest of all time, The Sopranos. He directed the feature film Are You Here? In 2013, which starred Amy Poehler, Zach Galifianakis, and Owen Wilson. And in 2018, he wrote and directed the Amazon anthology series The Romanoffs, which is wonderful. He joins us to talk about Elmore, short stories, Cornell Woolrich, and much, much more. Please enjoy Matthew Weiner. Weiner, thank you so much for joining us on the Elmore Leonard podcast. This is a real thrill for us.
Thrilled to be here, Judd. I'm a huge fan. I've listened to the podcast.
Oh.
Yeah.
Any notes?
I think that it's important. The most important thing you're doing is explaining to people that Elmore is a writer.
Well, we try to do that. It's a lot of fun peeling back the layers, getting to talk to people about him, but also some of the writers who influenced him. And one of them we're going to talk about today, Cornell Woolrich. But I do want to start the conversation off where I typically start. What was, since this is the Elmore Leonard podcast, what was the Elmore book that kind of grabbed you and made you want to read more of Elmore?
Okay, so it's a weird situation where, like, I have 2 parents who are big readers.
Okay.
My mother really reads true crime once that happened, I would say from In Cold Blood on.
Wow.
And my dad was more of a detective, sort of juicy, more popular fiction, but really, Robert Parker, he read everything. I can't remember the writer's name all of a sudden. Lou Archer, whose character is Lou Archer in Harper? Ross MacDonald. So there was some of this sitting around the house. So I saw these books. I saw particularly Rum Punch, La Brava. Like many people, my introduction to Elmore was through the movies. And once I realized that, I think it might have been as late as Out of Sight. But of course, I'd seen 3:10 to Yuma. That's one of my dad's favorite movies. I'd seen some of the Western stuff. And I'd probably say, Get Shorty. Like the movie adaptations, all of a sudden you start seeing this guy's name, and his name was on the poster, and it was part of the conversation with it. He's that popular writer. It's like Stephen King, where you're like Stephen King's Misery, right? You need to know, that's the outlier. You need to know it's that guy. And so I'd say somewhere around then, the first book that I read that I hadn't seen a movie of was La Brava, and then I just started reading the stuff. I read Rum Punch.
Yeah.
And then I started reading the stories fairly recently, the Western stories. He's always on a list of people like Stephen King that is so productive, but also you kind of know that he's like, for a writer, he's a bit of a lowlife. And it kind of goes with us. I think people always think of Hemingway with this incredibly dramatic life and his reporting and his heroism, but there is a slightly self-destructive. I'm sitting here looking. I have some books out here where in my little writing shed, just a few of them that I put out here for a reason. Lawrence Block, Jim Thompson. These people are I had a writing teacher tell me in college, you have to be as interesting as your work. And that was a challenge that I've never met. I just am not that person. But I felt like with Elmore, there's an ashtray and a bottle pretty close by. And by the time you're reading Stephen King's version of his book on writing, if you've ever read it, it's so profound. The compulsion to write, the compulsion to the tolerance of rejection, at the same time, a kind of demon that you're chasing, that you're whatever fantasy world you're living in when you're writing, where you have control and everything. Clearly, Stephen King was describing, and I think Elmore cleaned up, sort of, but it definitely took a toll on him.
He did.
But
He talked about it pretty openly, where he started going to AA, and that kept him, because he was going down the wrong path,
it's an
for
interesting
sure.
thing, right? Because I read some of that stuff and it really humanized him for me because I'm in awe of productivity. I mean, I write pretty fast, and writing a television to have as many hours of TV that I've actually like, and how fast some of the things I'm most famous for came together. Of course, I'm not working completely alone the way he is at all. And with writers in particular, I wonder if this is true. I don't know if you ever read Mary Carr's memoir, Lit.
I have not. No.
Okay, well, she talks about writing all day and how it's kind of the first of these memoirs that we have now. And it's very literary, very confessional, and one of the best ones. She's just a great writer, very, very naked. But she basically says when you finish writing for the day, and you see this with Hemingway, with other people, you got to come down.
Right.
Like, let's say you could get a great day in, not an Elmore Leonard day or Stephen King day, but a normal 4 hour solid writing day where you get, 1,000 good words, 2,000 if you're him, 6,000 if you're Elmore, 8,000 if you're Stephen King. If you do that, 10,000 if you're Thomas Wolfe. I keep track of this shit. I'm interested. I'm a groupie. And
Yeah.
I just feel like I feel blessed that I don't have that issue, frankly, that I'm happy going to the gym, taking a nap,
Yeah.
treating myself in some other way.
I don't know if you've had a chance to read Cooler Than Cool, the biography that came out about a year
No, I
ago.
have it. I haven't read it. No.
I mean, I think the fact that he had to maintain, he referred to himself as a overnight success, 30 years in the making. Up until then, he was maintaining, and he'd get up early, and then he'd write for 2 hours, then go to work and write copy at an ad agency.
That I
Um,
knew. That I
yeah,
knew.
but so he didn't have. I mean, we want to talk a little bit about Cornell Woolrich, who had so much success so early. Sold a novel, I think, while he was still in college. Didn't finish college because he started making an enormous amount of money as a writer. He didn't have to be anywhere, and he had sort of an insane
I think
life.
the most interesting thing about Cornell Woolrich that I know about his life, and this is in the Wikipedia, but it's also kind of part of the lore of who this man is. First of all, he's writing mostly short stories and
Yes.
pulp short stories, which is always derisive. But of course, Quentin Tarantino has helped everybody realize that that's the source. Even though it has been for a very long time, right? He has maybe 50 stories that have been made into. He probably has 30 stories that have been made into 60 movies.
It's something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
and they are the perfect. As a writer, you're seeing just enough story. You're seeing just enough of a differentiation. I was attracted to him again because I two movies in a row, and I listened to a lot of old time radio. They use his
Yes.
stories, but two movies in a row where I'm just like, oh, these are based on a story. Who is this guy? What a great name! And then, of course, what I was saying, the lore that is known about him, whether you go to, it'll be on the Wikipedia, but it's just a conversation thing, is that he wrote a certain kind of novel and it went completely out of style. And
Yeah.
he literally was stuck after selling seven of these things and making a ton of money and being at the
Yeah.
top of that thing. He basically was the popular version of Scott Fitzgerald, who was not popular, but wrote jazz age stories about, you know, Tender as a Night's a good example. This Side of Paradise, they're young people. You could sort of see Fitzgerald being the most literary, but you can sort of see a kind of Dawson's Creek kind of like vibe. Seriously, of like pre-TV, pre-radio, then eventually
Young, wealthy, Gilded
wealthy
Age.
people with, they're young, they're having sex, there's abortions in there, there's drinking in there. Are you going to take over your father's business? Well, I don't ever have to work again. Well, and
Hmm.
they're not Jane Austen. They're kind of grimy, but they're jazz age. So really what you're seeing is a lot of extremely unconventional or non-Victorian women
Yeah.
in his characters. And I think he's gay, right?
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
troubled by it. It sounded like it was hard for him.
A little bit.
But he's got a real Cole Porter vibe in these books.
Yeah.
And then they go completely out of style, and he starts writing things about like, I think I'm gonna kill my neighbor's wife. The only way we can be together is if you get rid of that baby. He starts
Right.
writing these kinds of stories, and
It is.
The one I was most attracted to has been made into four movies, and it's the boy who didn't tell the boy who couldn't tell the truth or something like that. I can't remember the name of the actual story. It was made into The Window and Cloak and Dagger and the boy who couldn't whatever. And I can't. I wish
Cloak and Dagger starring Dabney Coleman, I
I know
believe.
it's a funny version of it. It is to me, I explain to people that story in particular and that movie is so taboo. And it is the ransom of Red Chief in a way, you know. This is a kid who the bad guys can't dominate because he's just so much trouble. But the reverse of it is it's really a story about working parents who don't have anyone to take care of their kid. And unfortunately, their
Yeah.
kid, and I think this is a little bit of Cornell Woolrich's life, even though I know we're here to talk about Elmore Leonard. Cornell Woolrich has a very similar life, and him I have read a bio of. He has a very similar life to Preston Sturgis, which is that he has a somewhat wealthy dilettante mother who
Hmm.
loves him and dotes on him. And they end up going to Europe and being on steamships and ending up in Manhattan. And so he was probably like a kid, as you might imagine in the movies, was around a lot of adults from a very young age and was both intrigued by them, mystified by them. And one of the things that's kind of cool is this story is really a working class story that he must have observed in some way. But the child has such a vivid imagination and is such a liar that it's a gift for a writer, but a pain in the ass for the parents.
The Boy Cried
The Boy
Murder
Who
is
Cried
is
Murder. Oh my God. You can't
yeah.
get better than that, right? What a great title.
I read, this is a while ago, but I read First You Dream, Then You Die. That's the biography that I read years ago. That line was taken from one of his notebooks or journals or something like that, and it is his life is. I mean, he was a real life. I don't think Elmore was as he observed a lot. He hung out with cops. He hung out with like all kinds of
Right.
people. He was very beloved by prisoners all over the world. But Cornell Woolrich, after he moved to L.A. to be he was a he was sort of a sensation as a young writer. Got brought out to L.A. during the 20s, so it's pre-depression. And then, like you said, yeah, his books went totally out of style, and he had to switch. But when he got married, that marriage was annulled because he was gay, and it was never consummated. When he moved back to New York, he moved in with his mother, and they, even though he was making so much money, they lived in these seedy hotels,
Right.
and
Right.
and he was just
It
surrounded
was
by it.
something like a Times Square, like Waldo Salt,
Yeah,
like a Midnight Cowboy hotel.
yeah.
Times Square, something
It
like that.
was just a series of these, and he lived with his mother, and huge drinker. One of the wild things, I don't know if I'm not sure if we read the same book. If you haven't read, I'll put it in the notes for everyone. It's a wild story, but one of the short stories he's most famous for was turned into Rear Window, the Hitchcock film, and where someone, Jimmy Stewart, has a broken leg, he's stuck in a wheelchair, he's staring out the window. Things may or may not happen. We probably should spoil it at this point. It's 70 years old, for God's sake.
Yeah, it's just a Kaiser Soze situation, I tell people. Like, if
Yes.
you don't know it, it's too bad.
Yeah. You've had your chance, but he, at the end of his life, he would wear. Apparently, he got an infection from wearing shoes that were too tight, and he never had the infection treated. He ended up developing gangrene. The leg had to be amputated, and the last year of his life, basically, he spent in a wheelchair staring out a window.
I'm shaking my head dramatically, negatively. It's so terrible. Uh,
It's pretty bad.
I will say this, there is not a writer in the world who does not identify with that story. That is one of those stories like The Shining, which I will use as another example, where you're like, this is about procrastination. The
Yeah.
Shining, for sure, and The Shining's so good the way he goes through. Stephen King goes through every person who was, including the ghosts who were responsible for him not writing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You are getting in my way, and it's done really well in the movie too. Even whatever Stephen King says about the movie is.
Sure.
incredible. But this whole idea of like, I am trying to get my work done, but you guys are in the way. And that is in the book, that is everywhere. And I always feel with Rear Window, I had, when I first got married, I was home writing, being supported by my then wife. I just gotten out of film school, and then we had a neighbor who had a parrot. Uh, and my name is Matt, obviously. So all day I'm hearing Matt, and just around. And at a certain point, you're just looking out the window, and you're like, "Wow, is that woman going into our building? Ooh, they're having a conversation. Can I hear it?" You become so, you really are hoping that a story will drop into your lap.
Yeah.
And the dynamic of witnessing anything interesting because you're the person who's staring out the window all the time, it's just it's a fantasy. You're really not gonna be the normal guy who sees the crime. On the other hand, you'll see now we have two stories, just the two that we picked to talk about so far, that are The Boy Who Cried Wolf, about
Right.
someone telling a story and not being believed. And that sense of dramatic irony is great in movies. And Cornell Woolrich does it great, and Elmore does it great too, where it's like, we've seen what happened. Elmore has a lot of heroes who take things in stride,
Yeah.
and that we're kind of like, that's how they're revealed to be tough. You know what I mean? They're kind of like, well, that's the way it's going to be. On the other hand, every once in a while, you're in a, I use Chinatown as like sort of the last of the traditional noir movies where it's self-consciously like a meta noir movie, where you have what I think Elmore is really good at, the smartest person in the world turning out to be the dumbest person in the world.
Right.
Right? Where they're just like, I know everything. I got this thing wired. I want this. She wants that. She's going to help me do that. I'm going to help her do that. Of course, they're coming here to me because I know that. Let me take charge and I'll get you through this. And in the end, it's body heat. It's, you just name the movie. The
Yeah.
woman did it, or somebody basically totally takes advantage of the fact that you did not protect yourself and you're not that smart.
I think as different as they are between Woolrich and Elmore, the one thing I think they have in common is there's actually very few straight on villains in their work. Like even the people who are doing the bad things, there's a little bit of empathy towards them. And
I think that that is the mark of really, I think that's how you get the audience. I mean, yes, there are people who are so evil. I always use North by Northwest. We talk about North by Northwest as a movie where another movie with a regular man knows too much. Cary Grant gets, and by the way, Hitchcock had made some version of that movie like 5 times, so that's the best of
yeah,
them. And or the most advanced, the one where he's so bored with every other aspect that he's just like leaning into a lot of amazing shit. But Cary Grant gets kidnapped. I always talk about this with my writer. I have a writer friend who's really into this movie as well, and we were into it at The Sopranos, by the way, too. We talked a lot about it, North by Northwest in
yeah,
particular. He gets kidnapped. They get him drunk by pouring a bottle of whiskey down his throat, and then they put him in a car to go have a car accident. And when he comes back the next day with the police, they have a different couch in the mansion, and I was like, that is true evil. He
yeah.
changed the I mean, who is villainous? But villains think that they're doing it, even in the supernatural. Unless you're someone who like, I must have 9 million souls or something like that.
Yeah.
In real life, I just, for whatever reason or other, was watching. This will tell you about my algorithm. Was
Oh boy.
rewatching a movie directed by someone I worked with, Frank Pearson, called Conspiracy. That's about the von
Okay.
sequence where the Nazis all get together. Kenneth Branagh's in it. It is a really Colin Firth, really really good movie. But they have 2.5 hours to basically decide they're going to get rid of all the Jews. And they've already decided, but it's kind of like a legal maneuver where they're giving Hitler deniability and they're getting everybody who does all the Aryan laws. This is a true story. They're going to have to get with the program. And Mark Borman's making them do that, and everybody they're all doing it. And there is a conversation in this one of the guy when they start talking about how many people they're going to have to kill, how the machinery is going to work, and about the gas. This is all coming up from what we know for the first time for in public conversation, public,
Yeah.
private Nazi conversation. And you're watching this thing, and you're like, well, who's the evil person here? Which one of these people is evil? They're all. This is evil. This is actually
Right.
genocide. Actually, they're going to be killing 60,000 people a day. What are they going to do with them? All these conversations are coming up. Well, we're talking about a horror movie here. A horror movie
Yeah.
where there is no bloodshed, no bullets fired, just conversation and documents. And when you're a writer of any substance, I think we're so fascinated by those people.
Sure.
And evil becomes a judgment. And why write about somebody that you're judging? Why even
Yeah.
bother?
I mean, do you mind if we talk about your novel,
No,
Heather and
no, not at
Totality?
all. No.
It's a great book,
Thank you.
and it is, I believe it was a best book of the year. So
Thank
congratulations on
you.
that.
Yeah. It's called Heather the Totality.
The Totality. I think I
Heather
said
the
in totality. My
Totality.
apologies.
Heather, comma, the Totality, which I can tell you people who design book covers are very do not like commas, but I got to hold on to it.
Why
So they
not?
know, listen, when you get into this arena, I had never done this before, and you get into the way things are done, and you're like, oh, I want my book to be read, and everyone's like, no, you don't. Why not? Because red binding is not, we've had a lot of losers with red bindings. I'm like, okay, wow.
Oh my gosh. The comma?
The
Wow.
comma, yeah, is a for typesetting that I kind of knew. I'd worked on poster art and stuff like that with graphic artists. They don't
Oh,
like punctuation.
I think it helps. I think it helps the book.
Uh, for me, it was the way it was. Yeah,
There's a character in that who it felt pretty evil towards the end. You start to feel a little bit differently. It's hard to let go of some of the Bobby character. It's hard to let go of a lot of
he's
what
a
he's
pretty
done.
bad guy. Well, let's put it this way: if somebody is evil, just remember there's a reason, and
Yes.
just remember, even if there is no apparent reason, they don't think they're evil, and
No.
that's kind of the
Yeah.
key. When you are writing fiction and you can literally say what's on somebody's mind, when you are writing in that format, that's a format issue, right? In a movie, I can't really tell you what's on their mind unless I come and tell you, like, I've been thinking about how to kill my neighbor. And even that you
Sure.
can't really trust because who's going to say that out loud? We don't know. If you're evil enough to kill your neighbor, are you really going to tell somebody? Maybe under the dramatic bullshit of like, I'm about to kill you, so I'm going to monologue and tell you my whole plan, Mr. Bond. But for the most
Exactly.
part, you can, in fiction, I remember thinking about this particular sentence that I had in there where he says, I've talked about this before, but um, there's kind of a there's a it's in second there's a second person omniscient narrator who I think this works as noir because that narrator doesn't really know anything. So
Yeah.
they're omniscient, but they're not non-omniscient.
Right.
And so, but they say things like she reminded him of his dead sister.
Hmm.
You cannot convey that idea in a movie. You just can't. You cannot show that. But you can assert it, and it's very meaningful in prose. But
Sure.
Bobby's interior life, I was just curious about a lot of abhorrent behavior that he found pretty normal. And I wanted it to sound normal to him. And I also wanted him to have his own, he's manipulative, he is an actual sociopath,
Yeah.
which became very interesting to me because we all know sociopaths. They're usually not homicidal. You know who's got the best whatever Blood Meridian, that character.
Oh, Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah, that judge, the judge. I remember getting near the end, and I wrote a lot of it at Yaddo, which is a writer's retreat. I started it at
Okay.
Yaddo. I thought it was just going to be a short story, but I remember talking to a visual artist there who was a big Cormac fan, and I said, so eventually Bobby, my evil character, the antagonist, is going to get into these rich people's apartment. And I was like, he's probably going to be intimidated. He's been raised in a trailer park at best, and he's lived in a
Yeah.
hotels by the highway in New Jersey, and his mother, they had a barbecue in the living room. You know what I mean? It was like they were not. His mother was a heroin addict. What's he gonna
Yeah.
think when he sees this Upper East Side apartment inside? And he said, my friend said, he's gonna think it's all his. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I'm curious, just how long did it take you to figure out that you wanted to tell it in, as you were saying, omniscient second person, third person? Because
Yeah.
I just imagine like going from TV, and you happen to be someone who's written some of the great television that's ever been made. How did you land on that? I mean, maybe that was the first choice. Maybe you
That's,
played
that's
with it. I'm
first of
just
all, it's very kind. I'm not going to let that pass by and just go like, oh yes, that's true. That is very nice of you to say. Thank you. Um,
there is a sign behind
no,
you
no,
that says "World."
I appreciate that. That's kind. Um, I think. Look, I wasn't allowed to watch TV as a kid. I went to the movies a lot. I didn't know they were written by anybody,
Hmm.
but I did know that books were written by people, and my parents were into books. And I think that at some early point, I just assumed that I'd be writing fiction for a living or poetry and fiction. I like a good story. I love a good short story, which is really probably the closest thing. A good short story is a great movie. A good novel is a bunch of movies,
Yeah.
unless somebody really knows what they're doing and knows how to. I mean, if you just read Gone with the Wind, super poppy book, and just see how they figured out how to make that even into a 4-hour movie is impressive. And people were still annoyed that it didn't capture the book, a book that
Right.
everyone in America had bought and read. There is the visual aspect of filmmaking, casting, you know, all of those things I was taking advantage I don't have to do. Oh, they're gonna go to Disney World. How much does that cost? No, it's just a sentence. We're in Disney World at a hotel. That
Yeah.
is, I can describe this person and I don't have to find the person. I'm going to give you a description of Mark, the main character, who's homely. He's
Yeah.
homely and ordinary, and you will see whatever that means to you in your mind. You're going to cast it, right?
Right.
And that to me was exciting, being on the inside of it. There's very little dialogue in the book. At a certain point, it just became a decision like, okay, I'm great at writing dialogue or known for writing dialogue, let's put it that way. I'm going to not do that, not to avoid my strength, but because I can go inside everybody's head. And I
Hmm.
became very interested in this book in particular in point of view.
Yes.
So the book goes, there's four characters, really. There's the mom, the dad, their daughter Heather, and Bobby. You will go inside everyone's head. In fact, the book kind of like gets a lot of energy at a certain point when we go into the little girl's head, into Heather's head, and we hear her viewpoint.
And she's once she's old enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to take sometimes the fun is you get to see an event from two different sides,
Hmm.
and also you get to hear the way they see the world to be true. And there's a lot of conflict in it. So the writer, anybody who reviews a book and says the writer is saying blah blah blah, they never like it's the character that's saying it. Yes, the writer's in charge of what the character's saying, but if the character is a racist, it doesn't make the writer a racist. And this is a
Yeah.
problem we have right now. It's a huge problem we have right now. What is it? What is the Chekhov said? It's my job to tell you. It's not my job to tell you that stealing horses is wrong. It's my job to tell you that this man is a horse thief.
Right.
And I loved just kind of presenting this in this way. And it's seeming, and the book stemmed from a real life event, from something I witnessed. Yeah,
What
I know it's
happened?
hard to believe because it's so graphic, but then your imagination sort of spins out. And then there was a challenge made. Like I said, I thought of it on the way to Yaddo, and then you talk about your work with other people there if you want to. Not everybody's even doing the same thing. There's composers, there's visual artists, there's a lot of writers. And so I had seen walking up by the Carlisle Hotel in New York City a very beautiful, probably 15 or 16-year-old girl who looked way older but was clearly a schoolgirl. She's wearing a uniform, walking on
Yeah.
this street, and it created a stir among
Okay.
men, the women, etc., because this woman was very beautiful, this young girl, and which was with her friend who was not as noticeable. And then
Okay.
I saw everybody sort of paying attention to her, and then I saw her walk into an apartment building that was under construction, which was clearly her home. I don't know. It might not have been her home, but that's what it looked like. And there was a
Sure.
construction worker there, a white guy with a tattoo on his face, although my character doesn't have that, who stared at her in a way that was really unsettling.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what if her dad saw that?
Right.
What would he do? What is the man who can afford this building? And you think, oh, maybe he'd hire someone to kill this guy or he'd get him fired. But I kept thinking about them physically going after each other. And no,
Yeah.
there's no man who makes enough money, unless he's a prize fighter,
Mm-hmm.
who's going to match up physically with this man I saw, the construction worker. It would be you'd
Yeah.
be unmatched and it'd be terrifying. And so then I sort of started with this child who created the stir. And it became a little bit of a story about a taboo that I don't think's been written about, which is the parents competing over this child. They're married
Yeah.
and they're competing
Yeah.
over who the child is such. Um, you talk about reflected glory. The child is an exceptional child, exceptionally
Yeah.
beautiful, exceptionally feeling. And that's another thing that went along with it is I remember, I think James Elroy has written about this. There was a girl at my kid's school who was murdered by
Okay.
somebody, as it was horrible. And she was kidnapped by a homeless man, or who really had just gotten out of jail as well, by the way. And this is a really horrifying story, but it became obvious that she had had many opportunities to get away during the evening that he had kidnapped her and didn't. And
Huh.
I started thinking that it might have been a little bit of her empathy, her
Mm.
empathic nature allowed her to be killed.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
It's terrifying. And by the way, there's some
That's
purity
terrifying.
to it, right?
I have a 3-year-old daughter. That's
And you've
terrifying.
seen Breaking the Waves, right? This is not
Yeah.
I
Sure.
didn't invent this idea that there are people who are going to allow themselves to be sacrificed because they think it's better than getting in the way of the people who need to kill them, which is crazy because self-preservation is everything. And this was an incredible
Right.
kid. So I love this idea, loved, that you had this incredibly special kid who both the parents were deeply invested in. Their marriage is not good, but it is their marriage. And you kind of start with the little girl being born into this amazing family that's messed up or whatever, being the focus, being exceptional, and then you go and you see Bobby being born. And then I had this great
Right.
dramatic structure where I could checkerboard between them. Their trip to Florida and Bobby killing his mother. Here's Disney
Yeah.
World, here's Florida. And then you feel like you're Cornell Woolrich or Alfred Hitchcock or whatever. And I can just say, in terms of my writing, like Mad Men in particular, there's no murder in Mad Men. 92 hours
Well,
without murder. So when you have a story with the threat of a
so
murder,
Pete's mom really fell off the boat.
well, they didn't do the killing, right? Pete's mom really felt. No, I think she was definitely pushed off the boat. I think that the great thing about that thing to me was like, I just don't. That's where reality is your friend. Where you're like, are you
Yeah.
really in the movies? You do anything to find out who killed your mom. But
Yeah.
if it's going to cost all the inheritance, and you weren't a big fan, and she was pretty old, and they got that line, which is, she loved the sea. There is Carly Ray, who wrote on the show, wrote that script with me. She was a writer's assistant at the time, and she had that line where they're asking that the family lawyer, like, okay, so we want to find this guy and track him down and prosecute him. And he said, oh, that'd be very expensive. And then the brother goes, ballpark. Just give us a round.
Yeah.
And it just made me laugh so hard. You're talking about finding your mother's killer.
So great.
Yeah.
So poor Mrs. Campbell.
Yeah.
But no.
Dottie,
So
Dot Campbell.
Dot.
Dorothy
Oh, golly.
Dyke Campbell.
She was lovely. Should we call short stories something else? Because I think they are unique in what they can do. But when you say short
You're
story,
so right.
should there be a different name for it?
They're just second class citizens. It's just wrong. There is a hierarchy I found in how literature is ranked in our world, at least in America and in classical. For whatever reason, or because of Shakespeare, drama is always number one. Actually,
Okay.
poetry is number one, then
Okay.
drama, right? Then novel. The play is second to the poem, right? And so if you've got like, Homer and then Shakespeare in
Yeah.
order, right? And then you
Okay.
have the novel, whether it's, Catch 22 or For Whom the Bell Tolls, right? It's going to move all the way down there, East of Eden, etc. And then you have the short story after that, and I don't know what goes after that, TV, probably, and the newspaper. And so, film before TV for sure. And I have always wondered, like, I would take someone like John Cheever, who I admire so tremendously, and have emulated in as many as stolen as much as I can from him, and just look at his short stories or Hemingway's short stories. Hill's like White Elephants, there's a lot of dialogue in these stories, instant character, instant setting, some kind of
Yeah.
aha, often a twist, a resonance,
Yeah.
and you're just like, just in and out so perfectly, right? And then there's microfiction, I read Grace Paley, right? Some of these Grace Paley stories she does some that are. Amy Hempel has stories that are like 2,000 words, 1,500
Mm.
words that they actually call microfiction. Grace Paley has a story called Wants that is probably 1,500 words, that is an entire lifetime of conversation you could
Wow.
have from this story.
Yeah.
And it's not supernatural, but it is the way the time passes in the story. So,
Huh.
and then you have a story that just has such deep impact, like the lottery.
Yeah.
You're like, how many versions of the lottery are there going to be? At this point, there's got to be a full season of Simpsons episodes that are derived from the lottery. Right? I just feel like it's underappreciated, and you don't have to do both. You don't have to pitch and hit. You don't have to be Shohei Ohtani. But you can
Right.
be, you know, God. Some people's short novels are great. I don't think that. I like sometimes you take someone like Salinger, right?
Okay.
Those short stories are exquisite. There
Yeah.
are three novels, right? Would you say?
I
Maybe
mean,
two? Brandy and
two and a half.
Brandy and Zoe is two books. It's not really they're both two short stories, right? Got
Yeah.
Catcher in the Rye. What else is there?
I think there was an unfinished.
Okay, so for what was
Let's.
published, he is a short
Yeah.
story writer, one of the
Right.
best.
Yeah.
And a lot of it feels like a warm up for that novel,
Sure.
right? The character, the world, everything. Bravo. I don't like John Cheever's novels as much. I don't like Steinbeck's short stories very much. But The Pearl is a short story, or is it? Is it a novella? I don't know.
Yeah.
What the form is very impressive. And especially if you read East of Eden, you're looking at a lot of short stories kind of on the same topic with the same people. I think it's
It's interesting.
underappreciated. I wish it did have a different name. The story, my novel, the agent decided to call it a novel. I thought it was a novella. I thought it was a short story, and then I found out it was way longer than a short story. I had a writer tell me that there is a form called the long story. It might be a British
Okay.
thing. I don't know. But whatever it
All
is that
right.
they decided to call it a novel. I know that when I went to talk to the agent who was going to publish it, the manuscript was 98 pages. The book is 130. And he said to me, maybe I've been reading Charles Dickens all summer, but this really seems underdeveloped to me. There are scenes that could come out of these things. And I'm like thinking, well, Charles Dickens is being paid by the word. We know that. And I got Charles Dickens, I consider to be the first TV writer. I mean, his serialization skills are unparalleled.
Yeah.
It's just like you cannot get enough of it. You reread A Tale of Two Cities, the last 100 pages of this 350-page book take place in 24 hours. It's literally the guy gets into the prison and he's going to be executed at the end of it, and it's everything that happens on the way there. Just
Yeah.
like he's got you. You just can't breathe. It's so tense. It's 100 pages, right?
Yeah.
So pages, pages, words, whatever. Hemingway can do both. But what I was saying, who was I talking about right before that? Right before Dickens. Oh, about the agent. I
Your
told him, I
editor?
go, I'll do
Or you?
whatever you want. I want you to publish this. I'll do whatever you want. This is my first attempt at something this long. And I had jokingly said, like, my search, if you check my search, you're not going to see porn, you're not going to see anything. You're going to see, like, what's the shortest novel? How many words are there in The Great Gatsby? How many words are there? Animal Farm, by the way, is probably the shortest novel. But is it a short story? I don't know. It's all defined by who's selling it in a weird way. You know,
Yeah.
The Dead.
Yeah.
The Dead is a very long story, but it goes into a Joyce book with a bunch of other short stories. But it is 100 pages, at 80 pages. So
Yeah.
I said to him, "This is all I will say. I'll do whatever you want. Just know that this was way harder. That if I were to meander,
It's
describe more
yeah.
furniture, talk about the weather, as Elmore said, never talk about the weather, right? I could drag this out. And I could also do, one of the famous stories in fiction is that Virginia, Mrs. Dalloway, which is a very immediate book that takes place in one day, is actually two short stories that were married together. I don't know if you know
Well,
that.
I think it is. It's so tight, and I think the way that it is written, the suspense, it
I
works,
felt it
and
was,
it's like a freight
that's
train.
very kind. I felt it was like novel concentrate. I'm like,
Oh
you
yeah.
are not going to be able to, if I make this take longer, you're not going to have a knot in your stomach. I can't give you a knot in your stomach for more than 100 pages. I just can't.
Yeah. Yeah. It would have been. It would have been.
Unbearable.
It would have been less fun. And I will share that I did do a little bit of online shopping for handguns
Oh, really?
for self defense afterwards. Two more things. I have
Sure,
two more
sure.
questions for you that are Mad Men related,
Yeah,
if you don't
I
mind.
don't mind that.
The first is I don't know if you ever there's a in the show notes I'll have a story. I don't know if you ever saw. There's a very brief interview with Elmore who worked in advertising for 30 some
Right.
years about, and he mentioned they asked him what he thought of Mad Men,
I did not see
and
this. No, I want to see this.
he had very high praise, but he said there was too much drinking and too much smoking.
Oh, really?
Yes. Elmore, who lived until his late 80s, smoked until he died, and also was a recovering
Right.
alcoholic. So I don't know Alex, his grandson. I joke about this. I don't know if he's the person to trust about the drinking and the smoking, but
I would not trust anything because the fact is, the people who are from this era, they were dead.
don't remember
That they
it.
don't.
Yeah.
There's no one. There's no one who
Yeah.
drank and smoked like that who was alive when I made the show. Don't forget, I wrote the show in 1999 and I shot it in 2006. So that makes
Right.
1999 makes somebody, if they were Don Draper's age, they would be 68.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And if they were
Exactly.
in charge back then, they'd be in their 70s. No one who drinks and smokes like that is alive at 68 unless you've got the rare genes of Elmore Leonard. That kept a lot of us smoking longer than we should have.
But
But the
but
women
he
who
kept
were
drink.
there,
He quit drinking.
right, he quit drinking. Um, but the smoking is worse than the drinking, believe it or not.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. I got to work on a Freaky Deaky based on Elmore Leonard novel,
Right.
and he would come to the set for a few minutes just to encourage us, to cheer us up, rally the troops. Maybe he was 30 minutes at a time, and then he got bored. But no matter how many no smoking signs there were on set, he was always smoking, and he wasn't really smoking; he was just holding a lit cigarette. But
And I was in City Hall, the Hôtel de Ville in Paris.
oh,
And
okay.
Catherine Deneuve came and she just lit up a cigarette, and everyone was like, "Is she allowed to?" And I was like, "Are we allowed to smoke in here?" Because I smoked at the time. And they're like, "No, Miss Deneuve can smoke wherever Madame Deneuve smokes wherever she wants to." I was like, "Who gets to smoke in here?" And they're like, "She smoked in here." And then they showed us a picture on the wall of the Beatles smoking in the Hotel de Ville. with this
Yeah, that's it.
Renaissance painting behind them. So
Right, that's amazing. Um, every profile of John Hamm talks about when he got cast in Mad Men that when he left, there's this anecdote that is he left the room and you apparently, I don't know if it was in the room or at some point said that he was right for the part because he was someone who had not been raised by his parents.
yes, that's true.
How
I didn't tell that
how did you
story
know
for a
that?
long time because it's John's privacy. And then I heard him tell the story, and I was like, okay, I'm allowed to tell the story. I just want to say that, like, John's real life, where does that come from? Or
How'd you
the
know?
fact that it turned out to be true?
Yeah.
Um, I am a big believer in intuition and casting in particular. I always say, like, if you believe in AM radio, you can believe in intuition, right? How does radio waves work? How does Wi-Fi work, right? You're just like you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't feel it, but it does work. We're having a communication right now. I'm not plugged into fucking anything. But at the time I would say AM radio because this is like, we're casting in 2005 or 6, I think. And I don't know how to say it, but you just get a feeling. And there was something about John in particular. I just felt it. I just felt that I knew Don's whole story. And of course
Yeah.
it was not in the pilot, and I didn't know how much of it was going to be in the show. But I knew that he was my noir hero and he needed this pretty dark identity based. I'd written a whole movie that I'd thrown away where I knew the whole backstory to this character, and eventually it prompted. But I knew one thing is that his real name was not Don Draper. That was for sure, and I'd have to tell anybody that. But also, so he has a different name. How different is he really? But what I felt with John was a kind of God, does it say more about me to say that he wasn't raised by his parents and what that means? I was raised by my parents and I identify with Don. So it's just a kind of this sounds like a Dickens story. There is an orphan um sadness for some people. And
Hmm.
you could have it on no matter what the circumstances of your birth are. But I felt with John, number one, here was an incredibly handsome and funny man who did not know for most of his life that he was handsome. That's number one.
Hmm.
Okay? It's a big difference between someone who knows they're handsome or beautiful their whole life in terms of how they interact with the world, how they deal with
Hmm.
aging, right? What advantage they expect from it. I'm generalizing horribly here, but it's true. In my in my personal experience, it's been true. And I just felt a kind of profound I just felt his loneliness and it's not an insecurity. It's just a
Yeah.
loneliness, a lack of something. And you could be just as interesting. We were talking about someone was talking about Mel Brooks, and they're like, Mel Brooks is a kind of man who you could tell that his mom thought he was amazing. And then you see the American thing, the American story, whatever the American Experience, the bio on him, and you're like, oh my God, his mom thought he was amazing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Norman Lear, you can see his mom is not a lot of fun. He wrote
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah.
and so that was what that was about. But more interesting to me is that a lot of casting is done from the gut like that, where you're like, I think
Yeah.
this is the person because they have a
Yeah.
quality. My litmus test for this spoiler alert for the show. My litmus test is I knew that Don had to be smooth. I knew that writers in advertising were not the glamour job. It was a high paid job, but like when you see James Garner or these people playing slick ad men in the 60s, early 60s and mid 50s movies or money guys or whatever, they're super handsome and slick and glib and all this other stuff, but they are in accounts. Will
Right.
success spoil Rock Hudson? They're not writing copy or anything. Writers are considered more bookish, not as dependent on their looks, frankly.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
Don was a little different than that. but I felt like he had to have that depth. And all of the feelings that you get when you're identifying a character based on meeting a real life human being saying the lines. Yeah, a lot of it's acting. He wasn't famous, but I just felt like, oh, there's more than meets the eye with this person. This is just the top of it. There is something inside him as an actor that he can use. And turned out I was right. So I trust that.
I think you were. Matthew, this is a real thrill. Thank you so much for
But
joining us.
I
Thanks
appreciate you.
for.
I just want to say one more thing. Like my when I was talked about at the beginning about the podcast about Elmore, let's just say
Yeah.
something very clearly. That man's imagination is a fountain. And you're
Oh,
talking about him like understanding cops and prisoners liking him, reading the cowboy stuff, the fact that he knows what that job is. You can write a book about cowboying in the in pre 1975 that I don't think you're going to find anywhere. You sort of see movies like HUD and stuff where there are working ranches and it's already modern. It's already like there's doctors there checking for things. But just what cowboying is and how much time they're wasting and how much time they're spending with other men.
the Elmore Leonard podcast is produced and edited by Judd Rubin. Music by Greg Ahee. Hosted by Judd Rubin and Alex Leonard. Executive produced by Peter Leonard. Copyright 2025, Elmore Leonard Inc. Please visit us at elmoreleonardofficial.com or send us an email at hello@theelmoreleonardpodcast.com.
Where it's irreparable, where you're just dying to know what's going to happen
Yeah.
and what is inevitable, right? So I just want to give praise out to him as, you know, he's so popular that I don't know if he's given as serious a take as an artist, and he is a great artist. We have a little bit of a
Absolutely.
bias against commercially successful things, and David Chase always quoted Godard, whose great quote is he has many great quotes, but this quote to me is better than any of Godard's movies. He says, "Whenever something is both a commercial and an artistic success, it means there's been a misunderstanding." And I think Elmore is a pretty deep cat, as he would say. And
Yeah.
having finishing one of his books on a trip, the trip will never compete with the book. Never.
I know that feeling. I've done a couple road trips where I just listen to some audiobooks, which don't always have the greatest narration,
Oh,
but they're still good stories. And I remember there's a couple times where I was in some pretty great places, and I was just thinking about the book the whole time.
oh my God! I've had books ruin things. There's a book, a great book by this writer named Michel Houellebecq, who I think may win the Nobel Prize at some point. He's Belgian, writes in French, and this book is called The Elementary Particles, and it is dark. Not dark because there's a lot of murder in it, but it's dark, and it ruined Hawaii for me for a while. It has nothing to do with Hawaii.
Hopefully, you'll get to go back to Hawaii and
I gotta
and
take my
finally.
imagination back down to, can we watch a couple of episodes of Modern Family before we go out to the beach?
Anything coming down the pipe that you can tell us about quickly that you want to plug to our devoted audience,
I can
or is it
only
all top
say
secret?
I'm very happy to be working on a few things that I cannot talk about, but they are happening, and I'm thrilled. So we're at definitely at least one TV show, maybe one limited series and one ongoing series. It's been a very good couple of months, is all I can say. I'm very happy to say that, but I can't say any more than that. I promise I will come back when I can talk about what I'm working on.
That'd be fantastic. We really appreciate you being here today, Matthew. Thanks again.
Thank you, Judd. It's a pleasure. Thanks for flying the Elmore flag.
The Elmore Leonard podcast is produced and edited by Judd Rubin. Music by Greg Ahee. Hosted by Judd Rubin and Alex Leonard. Executive produced by Peter Leonard. Copyright 2025, Elmore Leonard Inc. Please visit us at elmoreleonardofficial.com or send us an email at hello@theelmoreleonardpodcast.com.